Here we go. Humanities 101 and NACHOS reminds you that you are enough. Now we join Dr. Dutch with the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever, wherever you are joining us. I welcome you, Nacho Knots, to episode 11 of season 2 of NACHOS, the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. It is Monday, July 21st, 2025, and whether you're tuning in while sipping coffee, pacing the room, or curled up with your favorite weighted blanket, I am so very, very glad that you are here. Today's episode is about new ways of seeing old things. That moment when you suddenly realize that painting that you've walked past 100 times, or that house that you've driven past 1,000 times, and you notice that hidden shape, or that porch, that car, that building, or when a song that you've heard 1,000 times and you've listened to for years hits differently because this time you're really listening to the lyrics. That's what we're doing today, because the research we're diving into doesn't just add new facts to old frameworks. It reframes them entirely. It invites us to question what we've long accepted, to rethink what we've been told is fixed, and to rediscover our own truths in the process. Whether it's how we define intelligence, how we think about a diagnosis, or how we honor sensory experience, this episode is a gentle push towards curiosity, towards the idea that maybe, just maybe, there's more than one right way to understand ourselves, each other, and the world at large. So take a deep breath, get comfy, and let's begin this week's journey of neuro-affirming exploration. Before we dive fully into today's topic, I want to take a quick moment to check in with all my students listening in, especially those enrolled in the summer section of Humanities 101. If you're hearing this and feeling that little flutter of, oh no, am I forgetting something? This is your friendly reminder that your Turing test project is coming due soon. Don't worry, you're not on your own for this. There's a full walkthrough video already posted on the YouTube channel and in the Google Classroom that explains everything you need to know, what the Turing test is, why it matters, and how to approach the assignment at large. You can also see the information about how to upload that video, how to make videos, all of that other stuff in the course information. So whether you're doing a straight explanation, a storytelling approach, or adding a little AI-themed flair, you've got room to make this your own. Even cooler, that video includes an example from one of our own college alums, someone who's gone on to become a well-known name across the African continent. And yet, we're talking global nacho knot vibes here. So if you're stuck, anxious, or just need a little nudge to get started, take 10 minutes, watch the videos, and let it be your springboard. You've got this, and I'm right here cheering you on all along the way. So speaking of indulgences, did you know that today, July 21st, is National Junk Food Day? It's one of those quirky holidays that gives us full permission to lean into our cravings, whether it's chips, candy, fast food, or that one snack that you've always hid in the back behind all the food in the cupboard for those emergencies. And again, no judgment here. For one day, the nutrition police are off duty, and joy is on the menu. But here's the thing. Even something as silly as junk food can teach us a lot about how we relate to comfort, pleasure, and habit. New research has been showing us that ultra-processed foods, the kind most of us associate with the junk label, may have deeper impacts on our physical and mental health than we once thought. From heart health to mood regulation, our snack drawer might be doing more than we realize. Still, National Junk Food Day isn't here to shame us. It's a reminder that even our cravings have stories behind them. stories of culture, stories of memory, sensory need, and sometimes, yes, even survival. The point isn't to feel guilty about the Doritos or deny ourselves the joy of a milkshake. I mean, it does bring all the boys to the yard. The point is to pause and ask, what is this food giving me? And what else might I need today? So let yourself enjoy that treat and let yourself reflect. Junk Food Day, in its own odd way, invites us to see familiar comforts and familiar patterns through new lenses. Which, if you really think about it, is exactly where we're headed next. We're headed to the idea of new lenses. Now, if we think about the quote, all right, because I always like to have the quote for the day. It brings this whole thing about junk food brings me to the quote, a quote from a famous food scientist and storyteller, and my wife would say, all-around culinary wizard, Alton Brown. Alton Brown said, "There are no bad foods, only bad food habits." So let that sit for a moment. It's not the cookie, and it's not the fries. It's not the late night ice cream after a hard day. It's how we relate to those choices over time, how we soothe ourselves, how we punish ourselves, how we narrate the shoulds and the shouldn'ts of what goes into our bodies. And for many of us, especially in neurodivergent communities, that relationship with food can get even more tangled with sensory needs, routines, masking, and executive function struggles, all playing a part. But here's the heart of the NACHOS ethos: grace over guilt. You're not failing because you had a fast food dinner. You're not lazy because the thought of cooking tonight was just too much. You're not defined by a vending machine choice or a perfect nutrition plan either. You're a full-feeling human navigating a complex world, and your needs, cravings, and coping tools are valid. Instead of judgment, what if we practice curiosity? What if we asked ourselves not why did I eat that, but rather, what did I need in that moment? What if we replaced shame with compassion and swapped rigid rules for awareness? In the world of nachos, we don't chase perfection, we chase presence, permission, and patterns we can live with. Patterns that actually honor the life we're living, not some airbrushed version of what we think it should be. So as we move into today's research, where some old assumptions are about to get turned onto their heads, hold on to that grace. Hold on to that openness. You're not a problem to be solved. You're a person to be supported. Again, if you think about that, you are not a problem to be solved. You're a person to be supported. So let's hold on to that idea. You are to be supported, not scrutinized, not fixed, not micromanaged into a version of yourself that fits someone else's mold. And yet, being a person in this world, it's complicated, especially in a world that often acts like it already has all the answers. We live in a time of Google searches, AI-generated summaries, and comment sections full of certainty. It can feel like everything's been figured out, like there's a right way to eat, think, feel, succeed, and belong. But underneath all that noise, something beautifully human is still happening. We are still discovering, and we're still becoming. We're still unearthing truths that we didn't know that we needed. We're still rewriting old ideas with new facts, and we're finding new language for experiences that didn't used to have names. And in many ways, that's the heartbeat of today's episode. The research we're about to explore doesn't just add to the pile of what we know, it invites us to reconsider what we thought we knew, to see familiar diagnoses, brain patterns, or human behaviors not as flaws to be pathologized, but as signposts towards deeper understanding. So let's step forward, eyes open, hearts soft, and explore some of the latest research that's challenging what we thought we knew about ourselves and about the universe at large. And so here we are, holding space for the truth that you are a person to be supported and not scrutinized. You're living, learning, adapting in real time, just like the world around you. And speaking of adaptation, let's talk about a new study that's literally reshaping how we see the universe. Just this week, researchers at the University of Bonn in Germany released a study with a jaw-dropping premise. Our entire Milky Way galaxy might be sitting inside a billion light-year wide void, a massive, underpopulated bubble in space. Now let that sink in for a minute. They're saying that we live inside a giant cosmic bubble that's significantly less dense than the areas of space around it. Oh, irony. Why does that matter? Well, if you think about it, scientists have long puzzled over a strange mismatch in how fast the universe seems to be expanding. Depending on how and where you measure it, the numbers just don't line up. But if we're inside this giant underpopulated void, it could help explain this discrepancy and even shift our understanding of the universe's age and structure. Now, I know this isn't an astronomy class, but stay with me. This discovery is a metaphor for everything we do here at Nachos, because the lesson isn't just about stars or space. It's about assumptions, about what we think we know, about how sometimes we need to step back, reframe, and see the wider system we're a part of. Sometimes we're trying to measure our growth, our speed, our worth, without realizing that the space around us isn't neutral. That we might be living inside of a kind of a contextual void that affects how we're seen, how we're treated, and even how we see and treat ourselves. Maybe you've lived in a system that doesn't reflect your brightness, that measures your progress using tools that were never designed for your neurotype. Maybe you've internalized those mismatches as failures, flaws, deficits. But just like the astronomers who stopped and asked, what if we're looking at this all wrong? What if we too can pause and ask better questions? What if the disconnect isn't you? What if it's the model that never accounted for the constellation of your needs, patterns, and pace? Here on Nachos, we believe that reframing is an act of liberation, whether it's in the stars or in your daily routine. Naming the context changes the story. So with that spirit of curiosity and courage, let's keep going and see what other voids we've mistaken for truth. So here we are, still adjusting our gaze after discovering that we might be in that cosmic void, a bubble, a quiet patch in an otherwise bustling universe. And just as we begin to digest that revelation, the universe taps us on the shoulder again and says, wait, there's more. Because in another corner of the cosmos, something so massive, so unexpected, and so wild just happened, and it's got scientists rethinking the very rules of cosmic evolution. This next story comes from the University of Birmingham, working as part of the global LIGO Virgo KAGRA, so that's LIGO Virgo CAGRA collaboration. The same team that's been detecting gravitational waves or cosmic ripples created when black holes and neutron stars crash into each other. And what they just detected might be one of the most powerful space events we've ever recorded. Back on November 23rd, 2023, two absolutely colossal black holes collided. One was around 100 times the mass of our sun. The other was around 140 times the mass of our sun. When they merged, they didn't just vanish into each other quietly. They created a brand new black hole that's an estimated 225 solar masses. This is a big deal, not just because of the size, but because black holes like this shouldn't even exist under the standard models of stellar evolution. And they weren't just massive. Both black holes were spinning faster than we thought possible. That means these weren't ordinary first-generation black holes from dying stars. These may have been second-generation black holes born from other black holes. It's like nesting dolls, but with collapsed stars, extreme gravity, and unimaginable energy. The signal, officially named GW231123, that's a Star Wars name if you ever heard it, was so powerful, it was detected from over 1 billion light years away. And even though it happened in late 2023, it's only now, in July 2025, that the team has fully analyzed the data and released their findings. It means that even the most confident equations can be humbled by new evidence. It means that nature doesn't always obey the rules that we've written in the textbooks. And it means that some of the most powerful forces in the universe were invisible to us until we built the tools, i.e., the sensitivity, to notice. Does this sound familiar? Because just like gravitational waves that ripple across the galaxy and nudged our detectors here on Earth, many of our own truths about identity, communication, sensory experience, masking, and burnout, they've always been there. We just didn't have the tools, the language, or should I say the permission to feel them, to name them, or to make them matter. And now we do. And at NACHOS, we believe that discovering something new about the universe isn't that different than discovering something new about yourself. Both moments require humility, awe, and a willingness to say, I didn't know before, but I'm learning now. So whether you're rethinking about how you communicate, unlearning old stories about productivity, or finally naming a need or a boundary you were taught to ignore, let this black hole story remind you. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to surprise even yourself. And just like the universe, you are so much bigger and more beautifully complex than anyone, even the experts, even imagine. So just like uncovering a cosmic void or a collision of massive black holes reminds us how much we don't know about this vast universe, this next story reminds us how much there is to discover about us on a human, evolutionary, earthly level. On the cliffs of the Dorset coast in England, a University of Portsmouth paleontology student named Ben Weston stumbled upon something extraordinary. A tiny 145 million year old jawbone with razor sharp teeth. That find turned out to be a brand new species, a minuscule early mammal that lived alongside the dinosaurs, now named, now stick with me here, Novaculodon mirabilis, thanks to its blade-like teeth and miraculous preservation, right? Ben wasn't hunting groundbreaking finds. He was on a beach walk. He was scanning for fossils. But with help from CT scans, 3D printing, and a team of students and alumni, this tiny little jawbone rewrote the understanding of early mammalian evolution. It's not a routine fossil. It's the first of its kind find in Dorset in over a century, and it's already adding new chapters to the story of how mammals diversified when dinosaurs still ruled. And this is why this matters to Nachos. It's humility in discovery. A single small bone upended decades of assumptions. Just like that black hole and the cosmic void examples, this fossil teaches us that complexity often hides in places we never thought to look. It celebrates curiosity over certainty. Ben's curiosity, combined with modern tech and a collaborative spirit, shows how breakthroughs come not from perfect plans, but from paying attention, curiosity and openness over rigid agendas. It reminds us of our quiet power. Like a student finding a fossil, some of the most significant revelations in our lives come from small moments, unassuming searches, and fresh perspectives. You don't need to be a well-known researcher to reshape history. Personal insight has just as much transformative power. So whether you're noticing a sensory preference that finally has a label or decoding a communication style that's felt invisible until now, this story invites us to stay curious, to keep scanning the edges for meaning, to honor the tools and relationships that help us see more clearly. Because just like a tiny jawbone can rewrite what we know about mammals, your experience can rewrite what someone else thinks about you. So from a fossilized jawbone on the coast of Dorset, small, sharp, and 145 million years old, we learn that sometimes the tiniest find can reshape the biggest stories. That one student, one walk on the beach, one overlooked detail can open the door to a whole new chapter of understanding. But what if that same kind of rediscovery wasn't buried in stone? What if it was hidden in margins of a page? And that's what exactly happens in this next story. This time, the excavation site wasn't a rocky coastline, it's a library. And the ancient relic isn't a tooth, it's a language. Notes, scraps of medical advice written in the margins of medieval manuscripts, dismissed for centuries as superstition or folklore. These texts are now being revisited by researchers from Binghamton University, working in collaboration with teams from Fordham, St. Andrews, Utrecht, and Oslo. Together, they uncovered hundreds of early medieval Latin medical texts. So many, in fact, that they nearly doubled the number of known sources from this period. That's crazy. And what they found wasn't a pile of snake oil and sorcery. It was a window into carefully observed, deeply human attempts at healing. Headache treatments made from peach pit stones and rose oil. Peach pit stones. Herbal poultices, notes about wound care, stress relief, and even scalp treatments that, minus the lizard oil, sound a lot like the wellness trends you see online today. So what does that tell us? That even in times we've written off as backward or dark, people were still trying, still learning, still experimenting and caring for themselves and others, just like we are now. It's not that the past lacked wisdom. It's that we stopped listening. We thought we knew better. And here at Nachos, that hits close to home, because how often have your own coping tools been dismissed? How often have your routines been labeled as weird? your sensory needs misunderstood, your way of moving through the world questioned, prohibited. This study reminds us that wisdom doesn't always come with credential or packaging. Sometimes it lives in the margins, literally. Sometimes it shows up in rituals passed down quietly. Sometimes it's something your body knew long before the science came up. I've often said poets have long named what scientists have taken centuries to define and quantify. And that's the heartbeat of this episode. Whether it's ancient mammals, cosmic black holes, or medieval remedies scribbled beside prayers, we are still discovering, still rewriting, still becoming, still unlearning what we thought we knew. So let this be a reminder. The world has always been full of people just trying to feel better, live better, love better, and do better. And that it includes you. Your instincts matter. Your rituals matter. And even if the world hasn't caught up yet, your healing is valid. So after peering into the margins of medieval medical texts and finding rose oil, peach pits, and herbal remedies that echoes today's wellness rituals, we're left with a powerful truth. That the past isn't as primitive as we're taught. Sometimes what looks like superstition is actually observation. Sometimes what we dismiss as outdated holds deeper wisdom when we take the time to look again. And that same invitation to look again brings us to one more story that's tucked inside the folds of history. This time, we're not looking at how people healed themselves. We're looking at the stories they told themselves and who they were who told these stories. At the University of Cambridge, researchers recently solved a 130-year-old mystery hiding in the medieval sermon. For generations, scholars believe the Song of Wade, a legendary Old English tale with a monster myth filled with magic elves and otherworldly dangers, they thought that that's exactly what it was, this mythical story. But here's the twist. It turns out the whole thing hinged on a single mistaken word. What everyone read as elves was actually wolves. And that one small shift changed everything. Instead of a supernatural fable, the Song of Wade is now understood as a chivalric romance, a story about loyalty, rivalry, honor, and power among humans, not mythical beings. The researchers, Dr. James Wade and Dr. Seb Falk, found that this wasn't just a correction of language, it was a restoration of meaning, a reclamation of narrative. And if you think about that in NACHOS terms, that's huge. Because how many of us have lived lives misread because someone misunderstood our word, or we were given a word? How many of us were framed as too much, too little, too rigid, too scattered, not because of who we are, but because someone made a meaning out of us that didn't belong? This story reminds us that context changes everything. And sometimes to understand ourselves or to be understood, we have to go back to the source. We have to gently correct the record. The magic of this Cambridge discovery isn't just about medieval poetry. It's about how meaning can be lost, distorted, or finally reclaimed, even centuries later. And just like those scribes who tried to capture something real, something human, we too are still trying to get the story right. So if the world misread your story, misnamed your needs, or mistranslated your truth, know this: you can still reclaim this narrative. You are not a misprint. You're a whole story waiting to be seen with fresh eyes. And so, from the dusty margins of medieval manuscripts, where forgotten remedies met modern rediscovery, we're reminded of how many stories and how many people have been misunderstood simply because their context was overlooked. It's the same gentle invitation to reread, feel, and re-know what we and those around us truly are. Which brings us to our next story. Found not on pages, but buried beneath the Mayan rainforest. Archaeologists from the University of Houston, in partnership with Belize's Institute of Archaeology, and thanks to decades of work by Arlen and Diane Chase, have finally unearthed the tomb of Te-Kab Chak, the legendary founder of the royal lineage of the ancient Mayan city of Caracol. Buried around 331 AD, all right, or CE, he may well be the earliest known Mayan ruler in that region. And what makes this discovery so profound is that it rewrites what we know about Mayan history. For over 40 years, researchers hadn't found a ruler's tomb at Caracol. But in this burial chamber, they discovered not only Te-Kab Chak's remains, which notably showed that he was elderly and toothless, but also a lavish cache of artifacts, jade jewelry, ceremonial pottery, intricate bone tubes, and even seashells from across Central America. And intriguingly, some items tied him directly to Teotihuacan, the distant power in central Mexico, suggesting diplomatic ties and cultural exchange nearly 1,200 kilometers away. This discovery forces us to slow down and remember three core Nacho ideas. Historical depth matters. Just like we found wisdom in medieval self-care, we're now seeing that ancient Mayan civilizations were engaged, connected, and sophisticated far beyond what we think and what we had stereotyped in the past. Context rewrites identity. Te-Kab Chak wasn't an isolated local king. He was a regional figure with expansive networks. And our assumptions about him reflect more about our blind spots of history than about what really happened. And lastly, relationships shape legacy. His burial shows active cultural relationships across geographical and temporal divides, because even back then, connection mattered. And for us, we get to ask, when were you also part of an unseen exchange? When has someone presumed they understood you without grasping your network, your way of knowing? And that's the question for the week. When were you part of this kind of unseen or unknown? When did someone presume they understood without fully grasping you? What was that moment? Let this tomb be a reminder that we're complex beings in dialogue across time, across context, and across difference. We deserve to be excavated carefully and not reduced with simple narratives. So what do we make of this constellation of stories? A cosmic void that reshapes our understanding of the universe, spinning black holes that defy the models, a fossilized jawbone that reorders the mammalian family tree, rose oil remedies scribbled in Latin margins, a misunderstood medieval word that changes a legend, and a long-lost Maya king buried beneath the jungle, rising to speak his truth across time. Each of these discoveries cracks something open. Some long-held assumption, some inherited framework, some story we thought we understood. And in the wake of that crack, something softer emerges. Not just a new knowledge, but a new way of knowing. And that's the heart of today's Nacho episode. not just what we're constantly learning, but that sometimes we must unlearn first. That the deepest discoveries often begin with the humility to say, what if we're wrong? What else might this mean? And that, my lovely little nacho knots, is a deeply neuro-affirming idea. Because so many of us grew up inside mismatched stories, narratives written by others that didn't quite fit. We were told you were too sensitive, too intense, too literal, too distracted. You were told the problem was you, when maybe the model was flawed. Maybe the tools were incomplete. Maybe the context was missing. Maybe the scribes got the word wrong. But when we apply the lens of curiosity instead of judgment, when we reframe instead of reduce, we begin to uncover something powerful. You were never the problem. The systems simply didn't have the whole story. This episode has traveled far from billion light year voids to CT scan fossils, from marginalia to Maya tombs, and in every case, one truth echoes. Meaning changes when we see with fuller eyes. You're allowed to change the story others have told about you. You're allowed to return to your own pages and scribble in the margins, actually, this part was misunderstood. You're allowed to reclaim your rituals, your pace, your sensory needs, your patterns of thought and feeling, not as flaws to hide, but as wisdom to honor. And maybe that's the theme at the center of all of this. Rewriting the story isn't betrayal. It's restoration. It's restoration of context, of truth, of self. So whether you're the black hole no one saw coming, the fossil someone overlooked, the scribbled note that turns out to be healing, or the word that was misread for centuries, know this: you're not lost. You're not too late. You are right on time, and your story is still unfolding. And as we continue rewriting stories, our own and those around us, it's worth remembering that these conversations aren't just happening in our heads or in this space. They're happening in real time, in real communities with real impact. And that's why I want to remind all of you, especially students and young creators, that the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference is coming up this fall. And it's more than a gathering. It's a space where your ideas, your innovations, and your lived experience can take center stage. If you're a student of mine and you've looked towards the end of the semester and you've been working on the micro-accommodation project, a sensory-friendly design, or a creative approach to inclusion, whether through tech, education, community care, or just plain brilliance, you're invited to submit your work to the Innovation Challenge. This is a chance to showcase your idea, meet community leaders and change makers, and even win prizes sponsored by local organizations who believe in what you're building. You don't have to be an expert either. You just have to show up as yourself with curiosity, compassion, and a vision for what is possible. And speaking of community and visibility, if you're in Michigan this July, I'll be speaking at two major events to celebrate Disability Pride Month on July 29th. One will be in Lansing at the state's capital, and the other in Detroit alongside self-advocates, artists, policy leaders, and community organizers. So if you can make it, I'd love to see you in Lansing. If not, we'll bring the spirit of NACHOS back here, and we'll bring those conversations to you. Because whether it's in a fossil, a manuscript, a classroom, or a Capitol building, your voice matters. Your story matters, and you never know who you might inspire just by saying it. So if today's episode helped you feel a little more seen, a little more curious, or a little more connected, you can help us keep that ripple going. You can follow, like, or subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in from, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, or more. Sharing an episode, leaving a quick review, a comment, or even just sending it to a friend can help someone else feel a little less alone. And if you believe in what we're building here at Nachos and at Humanities 101, the creating spaces where neurodivergent stories are not just heard, but honored, validated, seen, you can support us directly through the links in the show notes or on our website, humanities101.org. Every bit helps us grow this movement with care, sustainability, and accessibility at the center. But truly, just being here, giving your time, your presence, your attention, that matters to me. You're a part of this community now, and I'm so glad that you're here. And that, dear Nacho Knots, brings us full circle in our journey, from galaxies above to the pages of the past, from jawbones and joys to healing in the margins. Every story we've explored today, each fossil, manuscript, black hole, and misunderstood word whispered the same quiet truth. You're not broken. You're becoming. So as you move through this week, may you carry these affirmations with you, grounded in everything we've uncovered together today. Like the cosmic void, you're allowed to hold space to grow, to rest, to not have all the answers, not have everything, not have everybody's needs and even your own needs filled. Some things just need to be honored. Honestly, like splitting black holes, you're allowed to defy models. You're allowed to be vast, to be complex and full of gravity that others can't quite name. You don't need to explain your pull to be worthy of orbit. Like fossils on a cliffside, your value may not be obvious at first glance, but it's there, waiting to be earthed by someone curious enough to truly see it. And like medieval healers, your rituals, your needs, your ways of coping are not outdated or strange. They are sacred ways that you've learned to care for yourself. People are just misreading them. And like misunderstood words in the Song of Wade, you are not a misprint. If someone's been reading your story wrong, that says more about their lens than it does your truth. And finally, like a Maya king beneath the rainforest, you're allowed to be part of a legacy, even if no one sees it yet. Your connections, your impact, your place in history, they matter. So take a deep breath and repeat after me, out loud if you need to, or just gently in your heart. I am not too late. I am not too much. I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a story still unfolding. I am worthy of understanding, of softness, and of support. I honor what I need. I embrace how I grow. I rewrite what no longer serves me. I carry my truth with curiosity, not shame. This week, be gentle with yourself. Let wonder lead the way. Let wonder allow you to wander. And if the world tries to hand you a narrative that doesn't fit, hand it back. You get to choose your language. You get to be your own discovery. And I, for one, am so grateful to be on this journey with you, together, as a community. Until next time, Nacho Knots, stay curious, stay kind, and stay exactly as you are, because you're already enough.